Okay, today we're going to talk about two-step equations. Okay, so we're going to talk about solving two-step equations. And if you completed your warm-up, which you should have already, then if you take note or if you pay attention to what you did up here, you added 2 to both sides right there. Over here, you divided by 7 both sides. On the third problem, you multiplied both sides by 3. And on the fourth problem, I actually took 2 steps to get it done. I multiplied both sides by 8, which cleared out that 8 and that 8. And then I divided both sides by 5 to get x equal negative 24th. I could have multiplied both sides by one number to make it a one-step. I could have multiplied the left side by 8/5, and I could have multiplied the right side by 8/5, and it would have cleared out this whole fraction right here up top. First thing, that would have been one step. On the last example, we added 10 to both sides. So they were one step. They all could be done in one step. One of them I did in 2 steps. Okay, so that's what today's lesson is all about. Today's lesson is just about making 2 steps. Okay, when we're when we're solving 2-step equations, we want to keep in mind PEMDAS, okay? And what we do when we're evaluating, when we're simplifying expressions like we've been doing since last week, we start at the highest, which is parentheses, then exponents. Then we look for multiplication and division and perform that operation left to right. Then we look for addition and subtraction and perform those operations left to right. When we are solving equations, we call it undo or unscramble, okay? To unscramble means to take apart, right? To undo means to take apart. But we are going to perform our operations in the opposite direction. So we're going to look for addition and subtraction first. And if there's addition and subtraction, we're going to do it first. Then we're going to look for multiplication and division. Then we're going to undo exponents. Then we're going to undo parentheses. So what does that mean? Here's what it means. I'm going to look at this equation in example A, and it reads 2 times some number x plus 3 equals 15. Now, if you just listen to what I said, 2 times some number x plus 3 equals 15. The last thing I said before equals was plus 3. So if you just verbalize to yourself, if you are having any trouble, try verbalizing and reading the equation. Then what you do is you unscramble it. Plus 3 was the last thing I said. So I'm going to minus 3 from both sides because, pardon me, in algebra, the equality is kind of like a teeter-totter. That's where everything's equal. So if I subtract 3 from the left, I have to subtract 3 from the right. That keeps everything in balance. That also wipes out these 2 3's, leaves me with 2x equals 15 take away 3, 12. So now I have a one-step equation, 2x equal 12. So what are we going to do now? We're going to undo 2 times some number x equal 12. 2 times some number x. We're going to undo the times by division, and we're going to use the inverse operation like we talked about in our last lesson. The inverse operation of multiplication is division. We're going to divide by 2. We're going to divide by 2. Now, 2 over 2 is 1, so I have x equals 6. That's my solution. We can always take our solution and plug it in and simplify our expression to see if it's true. 2 times 6 is 12, plus 3 equal 15. 15 equal 15. Check. If I'm you and I'm in class taking a test, I will always, always, always plug it back in to check my answer. So that way, when you hand in your quiz or test at the end of the assessment, you have a smile on your face because you know your answers are right. So B reads, some number A divided by 2 plus 5 is or equals 18. So plus 5 was the last thing I said, so I'm going to minus 5 both sides. I'm going to end up with A over 2 equals 18 take away 5 is 13. Okay? Now, I have to get rid of some number A divided by 2 is 13. Some number divided by 2 is or equals 13. Divided by 2, inverse operation is multiplication. And notice, if there's a 2 down here, there's a 2 up here. That 2 over 2 is 1. This is why we do that. Okay, 1 times A is just A equal 2 times 13, 26. Okay, you try the next one. Stop the video, work it on your paper, and then turn the video back on and come back and check your answer. All right, so one thing here is when we add 4 to both sides, we get negative x is or equals 13, but we don't want negative x or the opposite of x. So we got to get rid of the negative sign here. The way we do that is we multiply both sides by negative 1. By multiplying both sides by negative 1, a negative times a negative is a positive x. So a negative 1 times a negative x is a positive x. 13 times negative 1 is negative 13. All right. This one looks a little more complicated, but just use your rules and go slow. Read it to yourself. 3 halves times some number x, or 3 times x divided by 2 minus 1 is 11. Minus 1 is the first thing we deal with. And, pardon me, plus 1 plus 1. So I have 3. I'm going to write it like this. I want you to see that this can be written like this, okay? So, because x is the same as x over 1, so 3 times x over 2 times 1 equals, remember these canceled out, 11 plus 1 is 12. Now, if I want to get rid of 3 halves, I multiply by the reciprocal. Remember that word from 8th grade math or your last math class? Reciprocal. There's an I right there. Okay? And the reciprocal of 3 halves is 2/3. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to multiply this side by 2/3, and I'm going to multiply this side by 2/3. Because in algebra, whatever we do to the left side, we have to do the right side. Okay? We can multiply by anything we want as long as it's not 0. So what is 2 times 3? It's 6. And what is 3 times 2? It's 6. And what is 6 over 6? It's equal to 1. So this whole thing becomes x equals, 2 times 12 divided by 3. You see that? This 12 is like 12 over 1. 12 times 2 over 3 times 1. 3 times 1 is 3. So x equal 24 divided by 3. X equal 8. There's our solution. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to take 10 to 12 minutes. That's 2 to 3 minutes a problem. And I want you to work the next 4. So stop the video and then come back and check your work. I'm going to go ahead and work on and finish these off so you'll have a solution. And you'll have my video so that you can check your answers and follow along if you miss them. Okay, I'm going to minus 12 because we look for addition and subtraction first. That's gone. 5x equals negative 25. Now I'm going to undo multiplication by division, and I'm going to divide both sides by 5. X equals negative 5. Okay? All right. Now, the variable's on the right. And on the right, if you look at it, it says some number m divided by 7 minus 3. See how I got louder? I want you to pick up on that, okay? Minus 3. So I'm going to add 3 and add 3. That's gone. Now I'm going to have 9 is equal to some number m divided by 7. I've got to undo division. M divided by 7. M divided by 7. Multiply by 7 and multiply this side by 7, and you get 63 equals m. Notice that the m is on the right and the number's on the left. You can simply reflect those numbers if you like and letters and write m equals 63. And now you've got m on the left. All right. Okay. So here we go again. We're going to do one more. Negative 5 minus x equals 12. Well, we want to get x by itself, so we got to get rid of negative 5. What's the opposite of negative 5? It's plus 5 and plus 5. I added the same thing to both sides. This is gone. Leaves me with a negative x equals 17. Okay. Now, remember what we did in our previous example when we had a negative x? What did we do? We multiplied both sides by negative 1. Okay? You can also divide both sides by negative 1. Okay? So, negative times a negative is a positive. Positive times a negative is a negative. So whenever you get something like we had right here, where it says negative x equals 17, another way you can think of this is the opposite of x, okay, is 17. So that means x must be negative 17. You just need to sort that out in your own head, okay? Last example. All right. 3/5 times d, some number d, you can read it that way. 3/5 times some number d plus 10 equals 25. Minus 10 minus 10. That got rid of my 10s. 3/5 times some number d equals 25, take away 10, 15. Okay, the reciprocal of 3/5 is, I hope you're saying it out loud. You need to learn what reciprocal means. The faster you do, the better you're going to be. Reciprocal just means flip it. Look, I have a 3 and a 5 here. Over here it's a 5 and a 3 because you end up with 15 over 15, which leaves you with just 1 times d is d equals. Now, I can take this and I can say 3 divides 3 once and 3 divides 15 5 times. So now we have 5 times 5 is 25 over 1 times 1. Well, 25 over 1 is just 25. And that's it. All right. This is your video lesson for two-step equations.